be talking about instructional leadership. I'll talk about what instructional leadership is, what it means to me, and its importance in the context of school improvement. I will critically analyze 2 instructional leadership theories and my teaching techniques. I will discuss my pedagogical approaches, my assessment approaches, my curriculum approaches, among other things. Let's get right into it. According to the Education Hub in 2021, instructional leadership is defined as leadership that supports the development of teaching and learning with a strong emphasis on student-centeredness. To me, instructional leadership should also include equity and equality of resources, racial discrimination. It should have assessments that are inclusive of all students and pedagogies that appeal to the 21st century learner. On a broader perspective, that is in the context of school improvement, instructional leadership is important to the whole stakeholders of the school. Take, for instance, the vision. The board of directors and the principals, they come up with a vision which allows for an overall academic success by pushing the whole school in the same direction. Coming up with goals. These goals, they drive the curriculum. They drive the school culture. Once the goals are smart, that is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and are time-bound, they allow for the school to come up with systems. Systems to monitor the curriculum, data for decision-making, to monitor assessments, scheduling, the management itself, and a careful selection of teachers. Furthermore, I've put up an organogram of the organization that I'm currently working with so that I can illustrate my current practice of instructional leadership. So at the very top of this organogram are board of directors. They come up with policies that ensure efficient resource allocation. The principals and deputy heads are key instructional leaders whose role is to implement the board's vision. They ensure that teachers have enough resources to ensure curriculum delivery. They come up with teacher support programs like CPD programs and CPD opportunities for teachers, and use the school data to assess and impact decision making. At the very bottom of the organogram, ask the teachers whose responsibility is to contribute to the educational development of students. From the board of directors coming down to the teachers, for effective transformational leadership to occur, transformational leadership theories have to be applied. And when mentioning transformational leadership theories, it will be amiss to leave out Bernard Bass's transformational leadership theory, which is characterized by 4 I's. The first I being idealized influence. That says a teacher needs to be a role model to the student. I use this in class by modeling good behavior, by showing kindness. Like, for instance, I had a student who could not say please or thank you. Well, I would talk to him and say please when I need something and thank you when he gives me something. He had begun to use kind language and be kind to others. The second I is inspirational motivation, which states that leaders inspire and motivate followers by providing a clear vision and enthusiasm. I use this in class by applying real-life scenarios to what we're learning in class. This also helps my students to be motivated. The third I is intellectual stimulation. I try to come up with games and puzzles and mazes that encourage my students to think critically. I realize that my students learn better using objects like Legos. This stimulates my students. The fourth I is individualized consideration. So I use this through tailoring my work to cater for different learning skills, giving targeted feedback and encouraging open discussions, also recognizing my students' individual achievements. Just pause for a minute and think about this. Is there one leadership style that is suited for every situation a leader will face? This brings me to Hersey and Blanchard's situational leadership theory. In this theory, they suggested that effective leadership depends on the context and the readiness level of followers. I personally adapt my leadership styles according to the situation that I'm faced in class. I am flexible. Like, for instance, I can use a transactional leadership style inspired by behavioral theories like B.F. Skinner when dealing with some behavioral issues through rewarding students who show good behavior as a positive reinforcement, and discouraging bad behavior by using negative reinforcements like saying you will not get a star if you do not give others a chance to speak, or you get a star if you give others a chance to speak. So the situational leadership theory is described in 4 quadrants. The first quadrant is for students that need a lot of directing. These students have low competence, but they have high commitment. So when faced with such learners, I apply transformational leadership style where I focus on inspiring and motivating my students to reach their highest potential. The D2 is for students that show some commitments and some competence. These require coaching. In this category, I apply 7 leadership styles by prioritizing my students' needs above all else and applying motivational theories such as the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, making sure that my students' basic needs of at least food and safety are met. This directly improves the competence levels and the commitment levels. The D3 is for students that need a lot of support. They are characterized by high competence and varying commitments. When faced with this group of learners, I use a democratic leadership style through actively involving my students in decision making on class matters. For instance, I created a vision board and I allowed my students to also come up with their points add on the vision board. So they also are working very hard to beat their small portion of the vision. This increases their commitment levels. The last one is the D4, which is characterized by students with high commitment and high competence. These students are at the delegating stage. I use the Bruner's discovery learning here by reducing my role as an instructor and taking up the role of a facilitator, encouraging my students to construct their own questions, select their own resources, and customize their own learning. These students are very autonomous and require active experimentation. This leads me to Jerome Bruner's inquiry-based learning theory, which says students should learn by discovering. So I take my students out for outside play. I let them be inquisitive, igniting their stimuli, finding out objects, asking questions, learning by inquiry. I create community-like groups in my class, following Lev Vygotsky's social constructivism theory that says students thrive the most in a community. Here, they learn from each other. I use the collaborative learning approach by Lev Vygotsky that pointed out the importance of scaffolding and the concept of zone of proximal development. When I introduce a topic, for instance, ecosystem, if my students show that they are not understanding a concept, like the role of ants in an ecosystem, I identify their area of zone of proximal development. I introduce other students or even a more knowledgeable other, someone from the wildlife park, to come and join the class. Scaffolding, or I encourage peer-to-peer learning until my students reach their zone of actual development. In my role as an instructional leader, I cannot negate the importance of assessments in improving my quality of teaching. Self-assessments through reflectivity and reflection, using student achievement data to show my gaps and areas of improvement, performance reviews through classroom observations. I also follow curriculum approaches guided by the 21st century learning, which are communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. One of the highlights of this study of instructional leadership was learning about the Kolb's learning cycle, and I foresee my future practice continuously incorporating the Kolb's learning cycle. So recently, I attended a CPD program. We were being taken through the use of incorporation of technology in class, where I acquired a new skill. I was in the concrete experimental stage, where a program of Neoport being illustrated whilst I was watching. I had a reflective observation, thinking on what I saw, how it was being illustrated, and how the examples were being given and done. I had an abstract conceptualization where I was mixing what I had seen to what I was thinking, consolidating the two. And lastly, I had an active experimentation when I actually went on Neoport and created some small programs. And then I introduced this in class. I was on an active experimental stage where I could also pass on the knowledge that I had learned. And now I'm seeking to continuously improve myself in this Neoport, increasing my knowledge in it. And I attribute this to the Kolb's learning cycle. Furthermore, I face the challenge of bureaucracy as the chain of command and line of authority within my organization is very long. So it takes a long time before a request is authorized. So to counter this, I make requests ahead of time. I have a challenge of time constraint, as in Sharjah, we have a 4-day working week, and in between that, and trying to compress all the targets of a lesson plan in a class where students have to attend other school activities such as sports, PE, swimming, and music, it becomes a challenge, most especially because we have inclusive classes with special education needs students. So to counter this, I continuously develop myself attending CPDs so that I stay abreast with the changing demands of an instructional leader. The other challenge that I face is limited authority, as decision making is mostly centered on top management who are not always flexible. My greatest takeaway from this course of instructional leadership were the theories of instructional leadership, how my leadership styles are important for every situation, as the situational leadership theory suggests. The need for continuous professional development, the need to continue to learn new things as the Kolb's learning cycle states. How data-driven decision making is important, and how important it is for me as an instructional leader to continuously reflect on my practice. Thank you for watching my video. Bye.